What if the boundary you finally had the courage to draw feels heavier than the burden you were carrying before? Have you ever noticed that doing the right thing for your own peace can sometimes leave you drowning in guilt? There is a strange kind of suffering that comes when we step away from familiar pain, especially when that pain is tied to the people who have known us the longest. If you have ever spoken a quiet, necessary truth to a sibling, only to spend the next week questioning yourself, feeling anxious, or waiting for the other shoe to drop, this is for you. Setting a boundary with family is not like walking away from a stranger. It is like trying to untangle roots that have grown together in the dark for decades. When you finally say no, or I cannot do this anymore, or simply choose not to engage in an old, exhausting argument, you expect to feel free. But often, the immediate reward is not peace. It is guilt, a heavy, sinking, suffocating guilt that whispers you have done something wrong. You are being selfish. You are breaking the silent, unwritten rules of your shared history. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that much of our suffering comes from our deep attachment to how things used to be and how we believe they are supposed to remain. We cling to the identities assigned to us long ago: the peacemaker, the quiet one, the one who always absorbs the shock. When you finally decide to change your shape, the people around you will inevitably feel the shift, and often they will push back. Not necessarily because they wish you harm, but because your growth disrupts the familiar landscape of their world. Imagine two trees planted close together in the exact same soil. For years, their branches have grown intertwined, and their roots are deeply tangled beneath the earth. One day, one of the trees begins to lean toward the light, growing in a new direction to survive. As it shifts, it inevitably pulls at the tangled roots beneath the surface. To the other tree, this movement feels like tearing. It feels like a disruption, but the tree leaning toward the light is not doing it to hurt the other. It is simply trying to reach the sun. Think about your own life. When you draw a line with a brother or sister, you are shifting your branches. When they react with silence, a sharp comment, or a sudden cold distance, you feel the pull at the roots. You feel the tension of decades of shared history. You feel the guilt of changing the unspoken agreement. But remember this: you are allowed to seek the light. You do not have to stay in the shadow just because you have always been there. Ask yourself, is this guilt telling you that you made a mistake? Or is it simply the uncomfortable feeling of a very old, very tangled root finally being stretched? When the wave of guilt rises, do not fight it. Do not try to argue with it or quickly apologize just to make the discomfort stop. Pause, breathe. Observe the heavy feeling in your chest without letting it dictate your next move. Let the guilt be there, like a dark cloud drifting across a vast sky. You do not have to pull the cloud down, and you do not have to chase it away. Just watch it pass. You did not create the boundary to build a wall against them. You created it to preserve your own peace. Doing so does not mean you have stopped caring. It simply means you have stopped participating in your own exhaustion. But navigating this immediate guilt is only the first step, because beneath the adult reaction to a sibling's pushback, there is a much older story waiting to be understood. And this is where the next truth begins. Why is it that a single subtle comment from a sibling can cut deeper than 1,000 harsh words from a stranger? Here is the truth few people want to face. When a brother or sister criticizes you, it is rarely just about the present moment. The pain you feel does not belong to the adult you are today. It belongs to the younger version of you, still holding on to old memories and old hurts. When you set a boundary, and they respond with familiar criticism, calling you difficult, telling you that you are too sensitive, or dismissing your feelings, it feels like a sudden time machine. You may have a career, a home of your own, and a life you have built with your own hands, but in an instant, their words make you feel small again. You feel ignored, misunderstood, or unfairly judged, just as you did years ago. It is a child-sized wound, suddenly reopened by an adult interaction. Buddhism reminds us that the self is not a fixed, permanent thing. We are constantly changing, flowing like a river. Yet, our suffering arises when we cling to the past, when we allow old identities to dictate our present reality. When we interact with family, we often do not see each other clearly. We see the ghosts of who we used to be, and we react not to the words being spoken today, but to the decades of history attached to them. Imagine an ancient, heavy brass bell hanging in the courtyard of a quiet temple. If you toss a tiny pebble at that bell, a deep, resonant sound will ring out. But the loud sound is not created by the power of the pebble alone. It is created by the vast, hollow space inside the bell that echoes and amplifies the vibration. The criticism from your sibling is just a small pebble, but the hollow space inside the bell is your shared childhood. It is the years of being compared, the times you felt unseen, the old arguments that were never resolved. When their words hit you, they ring through all that empty space, creating an overwhelming noise in your mind. Think about your own life. When they send that passive-aggressive text message, or when they roll their eyes at a family gathering, how loud does the bell ring? Are you reacting to the pebble, or are you reacting to the echo? You do not have to let the noise control you. When you feel that sudden, familiar sting of their disapproval, do not rush to defend yourself. Do not revert to the old role you used to play. Pause. Breathe. Let the sound wash over you. Remind yourself that you are no longer the small, powerless version of yourself that they remember. You are here, in this present moment, capable of standing tall. Observe the feeling without making it your identity. You can hear the criticism without absorbing it. You can feel the echo without letting it dictate your worth. Let the emotion rise, peak, and slowly fade away, just like the ringing of a bell fading back into silence. Because true peace is not found by making the other person stop throwing pebbles. It is found when you realize you no longer have to ring. But letting go of that reaction means letting go of the unspoken rules that hold your family together. And this is where the next truth begins. 3. The illusion of false harmony. What if the peace you have been so desperately trying to keep was never really peace at all? Here is the truth few people want to face. We often confuse keeping quiet with keeping the peace. The tighter you hold on to the image of a unified family, the more you suffer when the reality does not match. For a very long time, you may have believed that swallowing your words, hiding your feelings, and accepting their behavior was simply the price of connection. You learned how to navigate their moods. You learned what topics to avoid. You learned how to shrink your presence just enough so that they would not be upset. But this is not harmony. It is a silent agreement to let their comfort be more important than your emotional survival. It is an exhausting daily performance. In Buddhist thought, one of the deepest lessons is the danger of attachment to illusions. We suffer profoundly when we cling to an idea of how things should be, instead of accepting them exactly as they are. We want the perfect bond. We want the sibling who understands us without conditions. So we pretend, but true peace must always be grounded in truth, not avoidance. Letting go of false harmony means accepting that the relationship may be fragile and that pretending it is whole does not heal the hidden cracks. Imagine a wide, beautiful lake in the dead of winter. The surface is completely frozen over. From a distance, it looks perfectly solid, calm, and undisturbed. But underneath that thick layer of ice, a deep river is rushing violently. The water is dark, freezing, and chaotic. When you finally set a boundary, you crack the ice. To the people standing on the surface, it is terrifying. They blame you for breaking the perfection, but you did not break the lake. You only revealed the turbulence that was already living underneath. Connect this to your own life. Think about the family gatherings, the tense phone calls, or the endless group chats. You nod, you smile softly, you ignore the slight insult wrapped in a joke, all just to ensure the day ends without a fight. But what does that quiet actually cost you? It costs you your energy. It leaves you feeling hollowed out and emotionally drained. Before you even walk back through your own front door, ask yourself, is the harmony you are trying to protect actually real? Or is it simply the absence of conflict? What are you still holding on to? What are you afraid will happen if the ice finally breaks and the truth is seen? You do not have to maintain the illusion anymore. When the pressure builds during a conversation, do not rush to fix the awkwardness. Pause. Breathe. Let the uncomfortable silence sit in the room. Stop trying to force the frozen surface to stay smooth. You are only responsible for your own truth, not for their comfort with it. Because true connection can never grow in soil made of pretense. You must be willing to let the illusion shatter, but stepping out of that illusion often brings a sudden, heavy demand for reasons and justifications from the very people who want the ice repaired. And this is where the next truth begins. 4. The burden of explanation. What if the harder you try to explain your pain, the less they actually hear you? Here is the truth few people want to face. You do not owe anyone a courtroom defense for your own peace of mind. When you finally set a boundary with a brother or sister, there is often an overwhelming impulse to explain exactly why you are doing it. You write and rewrite long text messages, carefully choosing every word. You rehearse emotional speeches in the shower, trying to find the perfect combination of phrases that will finally make them understand your side of the story. You believe that if you just articulate your hurt clearly enough, if you just present all the history and evidence, they will soften. You hope they will say they understand, apologize, and happily respect the line you have drawn. But so often, your explanation does not bring understanding. It simply becomes an invitation for them to debate your feelings. They find a flaw in your memory, they dismiss your perspective, or they turn the blame back onto you. Suddenly, you find yourself completely exhausted, desperately arguing over the validity of your own pain. Buddhism reminds us that much of our suffering comes from our deep attachment to being understood by others. We want so desperately to control how the people we love perceive us. We crave their validation to feel that our emotional choices are correct. But true freedom is found in non-attachment. It is the profound realization that you cannot force another person to awaken to a truth they are not yet ready to see. Letting go does not just mean letting go of the old dynamic. It means releasing the heavy, agonizing burden of needing them to agree with your boundary. Imagine you are standing inside a warm, quiet house. Outside, a bitter, chaotic storm is raging. To protect yourself, you close and lock the heavy wooden door. But instead of walking away and resting by the fire, you stand at the window, shouting through the thick glass, trying to explain to the wind why you had to close the door. The storm cannot hear you. It only knows how to blow. And the longer you stand at the window screaming into the cold, the more exhausted and miserable you become. Think about your own life. Think about the draining phone calls where you try to justify your need for distance. Think about the guilt that drives you to over-explain a simple no. We waste so much precious energy trying to secure approval for boundaries that belong entirely to us. Ask yourself, are you setting a boundary, or are you secretly asking for their permission to have one? Are your long explanations actually bringing you peace, or are they just feeding your anxiety? You do not need to present evidence for your feelings. State your truth quietly, and then step away from the window. Pause, breathe. Let the storm rage outside, without letting it inside your mind. Stop trying to force the door open in their heart. Do your part, then release the outcome. Your boundary is valid simply because you require it to be well. Because peace is not found when the other person finally agrees that you have a right to protect yourself. Peace is found when you stop asking them for the right. But stepping away from the window can leave a very sudden silence. And in that silence, the sting of their old judgments can feel incredibly sharp. And this is where the next truth begins. 5. The sting of familiar criticism. What if the words that hurt you the most are only painful because you are still secretly holding on to the person they describe? Here is the truth few people want to face. The tighter you hold on to an old version of yourself, the more you suffer when someone else insists on seeing you that way. When a sibling lashes out in response to your new boundary, they rarely use new weapons. They reach for the most familiar tools. They use the exact same words they have used since you were children. They call you selfish, difficult, oversensitive, or dramatic. And even though you know you have grown, even though you have built an entirely new life rooted in maturity and grace, those specific words still manage to pierce your armor. The physical reaction is immediate. Your chest tightens, your mind races, and the guilt floods in. They hurt because they carry the heavy weight of 1,000 past arguments. They make you doubt the capable adult you have become, dragging you backward into the small, defensive child you once were, desperately seeking approval. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that suffering arises when we confuse a passing thought or an external opinion with our true fundamental self. You are not a fixed, unchanging object. You are a continuous, unfolding process, subject to the beautiful law of impermanence. When we allow another person's perception to define our reality, we trap ourselves in an illusion. The criticism your sibling offers is not an accurate reflection of who you are today. It is merely a reflection of where their own mind is stuck in the past. To find true inner peace, we must practice deep non-attachment, not just to physical possessions, but to the limiting identities assigned to us by the people who have known us the longest. Imagine walking through a beautifully lit, quiet house, only to find an old, warped mirror left leaning against a wall in a dark hallway. The glass is bent and damaged, making your reflection look distorted, small, and broken. If you stand in front of it long enough, you might actually start to believe that this is what you look like. You might try to twist your posture, shrink your shoulders, or change your shape to fix the image in the glass. But the problem was never your body. The problem is the broken glass. The mirror is simply incapable of reflecting the truth of who you are. When your sibling criticizes your boundary, telling you that you are overreacting, acting superior, or abandoning the family, they are holding up that warped mirror. You read their cold text message or hear their dismissive tone over the phone, and suddenly you feel flawed and guilty. You begin to question your own reality, wondering if they are right. But they are not seeing the conscious adult who is thoughtfully seeking peace. They are seeing the old, convenient role you used to play, distorted by their own discomfort with your sudden growth. Think about your own life. When they use those familiar, sharp words, ask yourself, are you believing the warped mirror? Are you letting an old story, written by someone else, dictate your worth in this present moment? Why do you still look into their glass, hoping to finally see an accurate reflection? When the familiar sting of their criticism hits you, do not rush to defend your character. Do not step into the dark hallway to argue with the glass. Pause, breathe, observe the thought without following it. Remind yourself that you do not have to accept the reflection they are offering. Let their hurtful words fall to the floor like heavy, useless stones. You are allowed to know exactly who you are, even if they absolutely refuse to see it. Because true peace is not about forcing the mirror to become straight. It is about trusting your own vision enough to finally walk out of the hallway. But walking away requires a profound kind of mercy, not just for yourself, but for the widening space between you. And this is where the next truth begins. 6. The compassion of distance. What if stepping away from someone is not an act of anger, but the highest form of love you can offer? Here is the truth few people want to face. We are conditioned to believe that love always means proximity. We think that to love a sibling, we must be constantly present, enduring every storm, absorbing every sharp comment, and fixing every crisis. When we finally create space, we feel an intense, punishing guilt. We believe we have abandoned them. We mistake our physical absence for a cold lack of care, worrying that setting a boundary is a harsh punishment. You may sit in your quiet home and feel a deep sadness, wondering if you are doing the wrong thing simply because it feels so uncomfortable. But Buddhist wisdom teaches us the profound concept of loving kindness without attachment. True compassion does not mean allowing yourself to be destroyed in the presence of another person. Sometimes, the most compassionate choice is to gracefully remove the very dynamic that is causing suffering for both of you. In Buddhist thought, we learn that clinging tightly to a painful relationship only generates a continuous cycle of resentment. Releasing your grip allows the heavy, frantic energy between you to finally settle. Distance can be a deeply spiritual act of non-harming, both to yourself and to them. Imagine two small boats tied tightly together with a short, fraying rope in the middle of a restless ocean. As the wind howls and the waves crash, the boats are violently thrown against one another. The wood splinters, the hulls crack, and both vessels are slowly taking on water. If you finally have the courage to untie the rope, the boats will drift apart into the open sea. To the other boat, the sudden separation might feel terrifying. They might scream across the water that you have abandoned them. But untying the rope is not an act of malice. It is the only way to keep both boats from pulling each other under the dark water. You are setting them free to float on their own, and you are saving yourself from sinking. Think about your own life. When you stay in a toxic cycle with a brother or sister out of a false sense of family duty, what actually happens? You grow silently, resentful. The familiar arguments repeat. The same old wounds are ripped open over and over again. You become two boats crashing in the waves, slowly destroying whatever genuine love remains. By stepping back, you are refusing to participate in the destruction. Ask yourself, is your continuous presence actually helping them grow? Or is it just endlessly absorbing their unhealed pain? What if the distance you feel so terribly guilty about is the very space both of you desperately need to finally breathe? You do not have to apologize for needing room to heal. When the guilt of distance weighs heavily on your chest, do not rush back to tie the rope. Pause, breathe, send them loving thoughts from afar. But do not sacrifice your inner peace to prove your loyalty. Let the distance quiet the friction. You can love someone deeply and still choose not to sit beside them in the dark, because true compassion does not require you to set yourself on fire just to keep someone else warm. It allows both of you to safely seek your own light. But as the physical space grows, you will inevitably have to confront the quiet sorrow of what the relationship never became. And this is where the next truth begins. 7. The river of unmet expectations. What if the deepest grief you feel right now is not actually for the sibling standing in front of you, but for the one you always hoped they would become? Here is the truth few people want to face. Most of our suffering in family relationships does not come from what is happening today. It comes from our stubborn refusal to let go of what we believe should be happening. When you set a boundary, a very specific, quiet kind of mourning begins. For years, even through the arguments, the silence, and the familiar criticism, a small part of you kept holding out hope. You believed that if you just found the right words, if you were just patient enough, or if they just had a sudden epiphany, the dynamic would finally heal. You wanted the easy, supportive, unbreakable bond you see other people share. But the boundary represents a shift. It forces you to look at the reality of the present moment and accept that the relationship you have always desperately wanted may never actually arrive. In Buddhist thought, this is the core root of human suffering, attachment to a desired outcome. We suffer intensely when reality refuses to align with our expectations. We look at a brother or sister and constantly measure them against an invisible, perfect standard of what family is supposed to be. But Buddhism teaches us the radical power of pure acceptance. Acceptance does not mean you approve of their hurtful behavior. It simply means you agree to see them exactly as they are right now, without the heavy, distorted filter of your own expectations. Imagine standing at the edge of a wide, ancient river flowing swiftly toward the ocean. You hold a beautiful, empty glass in your hands. You are incredibly thirsty, and you want the water to be perfectly clear, sweet, and still. But the river is naturally turbulent. It is filled with heavy mud, silt, and rushing, unpredictable currents. You stand on the bank for years, holding your glass out, frustrated and heartbroken, wondering why the river refuses to give you the clear water you need. But the river is not trying to punish you. It simply is what it is. It can only flow exactly as its nature dictates. Think about your own life. Think about the exhausting energy you spend waiting for a brother or sister to suddenly offer the empathy, the apology, or the deep emotional support they have never once been capable of providing. When they inevitably disappoint you again, the pain feels devastatingly fresh. But are they intentionally failing you, or are you simply dipping your glass back into a muddy river, expecting clear water? Ask yourself, are you truly mourning the person sitting across from you, or the fantasy of who you want them to be? Is your heart breaking over their current actions, or over the heavy, unmet expectation you carry into every single interaction? You do not have to keep standing on the riverbank. When the sadness of what could have been washes over you, do not fight it. Pause, breathe, lower your glass. Stop demanding that they become someone they are not ready or able to be. Let the feeling of grief rise without making it your permanent home, because peace is not found when the river finally changes course and runs clear. Peace is found when you stop waiting with an empty cup. But finding that peace requires you to learn how to exist without being swept away by the current of old guilt. And this is where the next truth begins. 8. The anchor of the present moment. What if the guilt you are drowning in does not actually belong to this exact second at all? Here is the truth few people want to face. We spend the vast majority of our lives suffering over things that are not currently happening. After setting a boundary with a brother or sister, your body might be perfectly safe in the quiet of your own home, but your mind is violently spinning. You replay the tense phone call over and over in the dark. You obsessively analyze every word you said, wondering if you were too harsh or if you made a terrible mistake. Then, your mind suddenly launches into the future. You worry about the next family gathering. You stress about what they will tell your parents. You become entirely consumed by events that have already passed or have not yet arrived, letting the anxiety completely drain your energy. Buddhism teaches us that the untrained mind is a restless traveler, constantly running backward into regret or forward into fear. We abandon the safety of the present moment to fight exhausting battles in timelines that do not exist. Mindfulness is not about magically emptying the mind of all thoughts. It is about gently bringing the mind back to where the body is. One of the deepest lessons of Buddhism is that the only place you can ever truly breathe, heal, or find peace is in the absolute present. Imagine a massive ancient tree standing alone on a high cliff during a wild, turbulent storm. The wind is howling, violently whipping the leaves and bending the highest branches backward. If you focus only on the top of the tree, it looks like it is in absolute chaos, on the verge of snapping and being swept away. But if you look down at the base, at the thick, immovable trunk and the deep roots gripping the earth. There is total stillness. The roots are entirely unaffected by the wind above. They are anchored, steady, and perfectly calm in the dark soil. Think about your own life. When the guilt and panic over your siblings' reaction hit you, your mind becomes the upper branches of that tree. You get caught in the howling wind of old family dynamics, spinning out into worst-case scenarios and ancient, unresolved arguments. But your physical reality, the present moment where the boundary is already set, where the conversation is over, and where you are safe, is the root. You suffer because you keep choosing to live in the thrashing branches instead of resting quietly at the base. Ask yourself, where is your mind right now? Are you actually in conflict in this exact second, or are you just letting the wind of yesterday drag you around? Are you suffering because of what is happening, or because of what your mind is projecting? You do not have to live in the storm. When the cycle of overthinking begins, do not try to forcefully stop the wind. Pause. Breathe. Feel your feet resting firmly on the floor. Bring your full attention back to the physical space around you. Let the frantic thoughts rise, peak, and blow past you like passing weather, without letting them pull you up from the ground. Because peace is not found by controlling the storm outside. It is found by remembering you are the root, not the wind. But staying grounded is only possible when you finally surrender the ultimate burden. And this is where the final truth begins. 9. The freedom of letting them be. What if the final release of your guilt happens not when they finally understand you, but when you completely surrender the need for them to? Here is the truth we have been walking toward. You cannot carry someone else's journey, and you cannot force them to walk alongside yours. In the beginning, we talked about the heavy, suffocating weight of guilt that follows a newly spoken truth. We talked about the deeply tangled roots of your shared history and the intense discomfort of finally leaning toward the light. You have spent so much of your life trying to manage their emotions, soften their anger, and shrink your own needs, just to keep the peace. You stood outside in the storm, shouting through the glass, hoping they would finally hear you. You held your empty cup by the muddy river, waiting for a clarity that was never going to come. But look at where you are now. You have stopped trying to force the frozen lake to be perfectly smooth. You have recognized the warped mirror of their familiar criticism, and you have chosen not to argue with the broken glass. You untied the boats so you both could float freely. Now, there is only one quiet, beautiful thing left to do. You must let them be exactly who they are, exactly where they are. Buddhism reminds us that every human being has their own path, their own struggles, and their own timeline for awakening. You cannot rush another person's healing, and you cannot shield them from the discomfort of their own reflection. Non-attachment, at its highest and most compassionate level, is the profound realization that your peace is not dependent on their approval. Letting go means trusting that they have the strength to navigate their own emotional landscape, even if they currently blame you for the rain. When the boundary is set and the dust finally settles, a vast, unfamiliar silence often remains. In that quiet space, the old, child-sized wound may throb. You may feel a sudden, desperate urge to reach back out, to smooth things over, to apologize just for protecting yourself. Do not fill the space with old habits. Pause. Breathe. Let the silence be a gentle teacher. Allow the guilt to rise, peak, and slowly dissolve, realizing it is only the ghost of an old dynamic fading in the light of your new awareness. You can love the brother or sister you grew up with. You can honor the shared childhood, the laughter, and even the pain that shaped you. But you must also fiercely honor the adult you have become. You are allowed to protect your quiet life. You are allowed to step completely out of the shadows. The peace you have been searching for does not require their signature. It only requires your own permission. If these lessons touched your heart, Share this video with someone who may need a little more peace today. You can let go now.